So anyway, life is a mess, and so is mating. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Yeah, when I talk with like scientist friends and stuff about dating, it's like conversations like, well, here's what I think I'm probably thinking right now. You know, that sort of, and I love having those kinds of discussions, and I find them helpful. And then sometimes I'm like, maybe I should just like learn to dance.
Yeah.
Instead.
Too much brain, too much mind, everything. The brain hijacking everything again.
Yeah.
It loves to do that. Keep on talking, honeys.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mind Under Matter. Today, we are having our second Valentine's Day episode because there's so much to cover. We've been on a good streak so far this year of covering a bunch of like basics of like big evolutionary ideas and things like that.
The biologists can't really boil it down, but you and we can boil it down.
Yeah, we got it.
And there's 2 episodes because, Valentine's Day is about 2. You don't get to be single on Valentine's Day. That's illegal and wrong. And it's
shameful for sure.
Yeah, very shameful.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do it. Just find someone and just mash yourself together with them. You don't even have to be having intercourse. Just wear clothes, but still just mash yourself with another person. And then when it's midnight, then you can go home.
There's literally things that do that. There's things that like in the ocean, there's deep sea fish, because you got to think about. So we're going to cover some of these basics today, but I'll skip ahead a little bit for this fun bit. There's let's see, there's an anglerfish that does it. There's another, what is that, a clownfish? Or is the clownfish
that's Nemo, right?
Gender switching.
I think you told me gender switches with clownfish.
Yeah.
Clownfish.
Yeah, that's not even the unusual thing about clownfish. The unusual thing, if I'm thinking of the right fish, is they have a given territory, and they have like they inhabit this one kind of plant in the ocean, and they kind of keep their population under control. Just bizarre. Like nothing does that.
So that
everything will just keep on
proliferating
as much as it can, and it doesn't. So like gender switching, that happens. Lots of different things do that, but keeping a population in check, I can't even think of another example.
How do they do it? By just not getting it on, or by killing each other?
Yeah, there's like I think there's only like one male in the whole thing, and then
oh yeah, sign me up.
When that, or maybe it's just one female. I guess that would maybe make more sense. And then when one of them leaves, another one becomes that gender or something like that. So there's never just like that many offspring being made. But
I wonder if it's just
still
tucked
so
back,
strange,
or if it takes a week to transition, where you're looking around. It's like, oh, it's going to be me this month, huh? All right. Well, hold on. And then your dick grows out, or it gets sucked back in.
Every species is different, because there's a lot of hermaphrodites out there. There's a lot of there's another one under the ocean. What is it, like a flatfish or something? I want to say a flatworm. I think it's a flatworm. I think there's a couple things like this, but definitely the flatworm does it, where they're a hermaphrodite, and then they do this like penis fencing thing.
Nice.
With it too, they have these little arrow-ish looking things, and if you stab the other one, then that one's like, all right, I'm the female. You got me.
Oh, cool.
I'm the female. I'm gonna do.
What if they both hit at the same time?
I don't know. I wonder if that's possible. Then maybe they both. You both that's give a great birth. Question.
Then, maybe,
who knows?
Like you give birth to his kid, and she gives birth to your kid.
I think that's that could be something. I don't know. That's interesting. There's albatross
Also, do they fence, or is it just quickest draw, like first one in, or is it like clang, clang, I've become more powerful than any Jedi?
That's another good question. I wish I now I got to become a flatworm expert. If I were to guess, I would say it's probably quickest draw. I believe they're blind. That's the other thing too, is there's a lot of, I was thinking, we were talking a lot about the decadence and decoration and everything. And we also have to see, like, what we perceive as beauty is beauty to us. There's all of these, there's all sorts of blind things in the ocean that are absolutely stunning. And clearly they aren't, that beauty isn't being driven by some sexual selection force, because the opposite sex isn't able to see that different color or whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
and also to some other species, I'm sure some things are just like the most beautiful smells they've ever smelt, just like outrageously, like very, very showy and like totally unnecessary smell, but just sexy as hell.
Yeah, we're probably that to some other species. I always wondered how bad human is to other species, or if we're maybe the top of the line. And then if that were so, like, would there be some alien that makes us all smell like just the dirtiest dog?
I don't know. I mean, we got to be the weirdest out there, because that was another thing that I wanted to. I feel like I'm gonna beat this point over the head again and again. Just
let's beat it.
Not this show necessarily specifically, but just through the course of Mind Under Matter. It's just something that I try to remind myself of all the time, which is that none of this stuff is meant to be it's not supposed to be a certain way. Like, something is, there's like certain things will lead to more genes or whatever, but that's not putting a value judgment of good or what is just incorrect, because it's easy to look back through evolution and be like, here we are, the pinnacle, we did everything right, we got to the top. And that's just not the way it goes, because it's also none of the like animal examples that I'm going to give, although various things like that might influence our sexual behavior, it doesn't determine them. And even if it did, who cares? Just like become aware of it. Like, if evolution is like wanting anything, like if you could talk to your genes and your genes could talk, which they can't, they don't even know you're here, they don't give a shit about you. But if they could, they would be like, have offspring. That's the number one thing they'd want. And by that standard, I'm an abomination from an evolutionary standard. I have no interest in having offspring, don't want kids, don't have kids yet, could have if I wanted them. And
I'll go see offspring in 1999. I'll give you that. Or how about my siblings' offspring? I'll take good care of them when I see them.
And even stuff that's like, even stuff that we consider to be like gender normative or whatever in today's culture, and well, that's just how straight people behave, or what, even that is really bizarre by a lot of species standards. Like,
having gender norms.
Well, I mean, just like so much of our usual stuff that we consider like, you know, leave it to beaver, ma and pa type stuff. Like, I mean, the idea of dates or foreplay or hanging around after sex would be peculiar to a lot of species, but nothing, you know, there's things like dudes, spectating football and then like wanting a female mate. That's like as gender normative as you can get. That's fucking bizarre. There's no other species where a male is going, hey, watch these guys. Hey, lady. Hey, my lady, come over here. Watch these guys that are better at competing on this thing that I value, that I don't actually do, but I'm just telling you is something that I value more than what I do. And they're really good at it. And like the lady's not even that interested sometimes. They're like, no, you have to watch this very in shape, wealthy dude like do all of this really impressive stuff. And I really want you to watch this. That's odd. No other species would like check out my competition over there.
Do dudes generally want their wives or whoever to watch sports with them if they're not interested? I thought it was more like, because I'm not a sports guy. I don't think you're really a sports guy.
No. I mean, that was like growing up, it was sort of a thing that like the women didn't like watching football as much as the guys, but it was like cool if you could get them into it or whatever. But such a silly thing of like, make me food while I try to explain to you why this much fitter male is more important than I am. And then like on the commercial breaks, they're visiting children's hospital. It's like Tom Brady, one of the most handsome men alive, like doing charity work and stuff. Like, why would you? Most species are trying to, some dude would be trying to distract from any like superior rival male, but we just have a lot more going on.
So if it's so strange, it always begs the question, like, where are we headed? We're trying to leave our animal nature behind. Like it's all these things that we add on to it where it's like, this is so odd behavior, but we're going towards somewhere. And it's simultaneously, there is no trajectory to evolution. There is no destination we're headed towards, but also there is the argument for a determinism where history does have a trajectory and the end of time has an attractor, and that it's all meant to happen some way, but it's also not meant to happen that way. There was no meaning behind it, but it was meant to always happen that way. So it's like, which one was it? It was meant to happen and it was never meant to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a lot of things are born with the like probability, like a higher probability of something happening. So it's like there's a stronger likelihood that this thing is going to head in this direction, but you can't necessarily predict it totally accurately. I mean, even if you
can't predict it, but after it happened, it was like, it was always meant to do that.
Yeah, of course.
The Sapolsky quote of there's not a sliver of space for the free will to have changed that direction. It was the domino falling in that direction the whole time. That's why, I don't know, the attractor at the end of time was always a fun idea for me. I think it's a McKenna idea, or at least he brought it up a lot. There is an end point in history, and we're not aware that it has gravity, but it does, and we're gravitated towards the end of history. We're being pulled towards it, and our decisions are not our own.
Everything just has a feel like that, and there's truth in that too. Without the say there's not an attractor at all, there's certainly a feel of one psychologically, like within our perception, within planning, within looking back through whatever happened seems like it was always meant to be in hindsight bias and everything else. But yeah, I don't know. I think that in terms of the determinism stuff, I think that's one of the most important things of learning these things, because there's a couple things that I worry about, which is there's two complete opposite things that could be happening. So if you have there's sea turtles that go from I've probably mentioned this on the show before, from the west coast of Africa.
You can't bring up sea turtles too many times. Yeah.
West coast of Africa to the east coast of South America. Have I told you about this?
It doesn't ring a bell, but maybe it'll come back to me.
They make this just insanely long swim just to lay their eggs. And why are they going all the way across the ocean to lay eggs? Not only is it energetically like insanely expensive. I mean, I think there's different drifts and stuff like that they get to help them along, but still, and you're risking being eaten by who knows what out there, and then
so is it, why don't they stay there, or why don't they go there to begin with? Like, because maybe where they are now, it's not a good place to lay eggs, but then if there is a good place to lay eggs, why ever leave?
Yes, exactly. And the theory is that because of the age of these turtles, so if you look at these two areas, they were actually right next to each other during Pangea. So when Pangea started
the original
splitting,
continent.
Yeah, there may have been some sort of evolutionary benefit to swimming across a river to lay your eggs because it got away from predators or whatever. And then as the continents drifted, any turtle that had now it's too late. You've already evolved that preference to swim in that direction when it's time for egg laying. And every generation's going maybe another yard. So it's not that big of a deal. But then you look at it, that's like millions of years.
Like that swim is what, like a quarter of the Earth, basically, isn't it? If you're talking about, where was it? West Africa to East South America?
Correct. Yeah.
That's that's like a quarter of the Earth. Yeah.
So if you think about what like psychological evolutionary leftovers we might have that are just
not
sticking around.
They're there.
Oh yeah. Where we're just going an incredibly far distance for no reason, where we could just be hanging out at that beach, not risking our lives in a horrifying ocean.
Yeah, we do that at a micro scale within our lifetime too. I hope this isn't a stretch, but kind of like you might dream of being something in the 90s and then the world changes, but you're still holding on to like, well, yeah, I wanted to be a touring comedian in 1999 and I wanted to get a Comedy Central special, and then you're still holding on to the dream of the Comedy Central special,
right?
But meanwhile, none of those things exist anymore. Comedy Central is a YouTube channel for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's similar. I think it's on. Is it Planet Earth? Is it the docuseries? It's the latest docuseries. One of the latest docuseries with Attenborough that came out. Pretty tragic one. He went pretty balls deep into the like, this is the next great extinction kind of thing, and like we don't have much time to stop this. Deep. Head first, I probably should say.
Yeah, when you say balls deep, do you imagine like stepping into water, or do you imagine David Attenborough's dick like going really far in?
I think that. Yeah, I think I imagine David Attenborough kind of teabagging a horrific situation. I
can't do it today.
No.
We gotta get Jeff Richards in here. Jeff Richards does a pitch perfect Attenborough.
It's so good. It's his Attenborough is amazing. So there's some like elephant seals or something like that in one of these scenes. It's just you never know exactly what they're showing you and what's going on, but I think it's portrayed as because of these areas where, so they're like up on a cliff and it used to be covered by snow, so they'd slide down into the ocean, but it's not anymore, so they just tumble off of a cliff and just flop, and like some of them survive, but it's horrifying to watch. The footage of it should have like, they should put a disclaimer before it's
Damn.
tragic.
And it's hardwired into them through millions of years or whatever.
So we want to be aware of those sort of things. And I think that's the reason why a lot of this stuff is important, whether it's about survival or status or mating or any of that, is that we have this unique opportunity where we're like this self-driving car. Because if we're like vehicles for our genes, we're like this self-driving car that gained self-awareness.
Sentient self-driving car, baby.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, okay, I was built to lug this guy around to and from work and go to the grocery store and back, but maybe I want to see other things. And you're going to
other cars, start a family.
Yeah, maybe you want to fuck a truck once in a while.
Who doesn't?
But there's still going to be tendencies. You're probably going to much of the time still want to be on roads and interstates and such. And maybe you're wired to like perceive things like a school zone gives you anxiety or something because that makes you pump the brakes or something like that. So, but knowing that can maybe make you go, you know what, maybe I'm going to go off road a little bit. Or like if parallel parking feels so good, why not just parallel park all the time? Like over and over again.
This is, have you heard Pixar theory, that theory where all the Pixar movies take place in the same timeline, where there's not multiple universe, but rather one story being told at different slivers of history? And the theory arranges all the movies in order. And one of the funny things about it is that Cars takes place like way in the future after an apocalypse, and that the self-driving cars become sentient. And so they eventually do become that way. The world does become just a big road with cars. I
mean, if you wanted to program AI, you would probably give it emotions and feelings, you know, to like fear and rewards and things like that. Makes all sorts of sense that animals would have many of the same sorts of emotions that we do. But being aware of that, I mean, if you think about something like sex, where we now have things like birth control, whether it's condoms or a pill or just like
not
monitoring
showering
a cycle or not showering, where you can just get all of the, we got wired for sex to feel good so that we'd have offspring. You can get all the good feeling of sex and then just like catch the repercussions in some latex and not have to deal with like $250,000 responsibility. That's amazing.
Yeah. You remember that old Louis joke of the animals must think we're just completely insane, like whoops, and it pulls out and like sprays it, just not towards the egg.
Yeah.
Whoops. Are they stupid? What's wrong with them?
Yeah, very few things other than like bonobos or whatever have. That's not true. There's other things happen. Dolphins are boning for fun. Giraffes. There's a lot of things.
Bonobos don't pull out though, do they? They're just doing it all the time. That's just part of who they are.
Yeah. I think but I think they're having, they're using the rhythm method quite a bit. Like the females, the
like
females might be
rhythm,
having.
Or are you talking like
menstrual cycle, like ovulatory cycle?
Not circadian. That's sleep.
Yeah. So they might be kind of loosey goosey when they're not fertile, but and that's kind of what we see is like these hippy dippy primates that are just free love, blah blah blah, but once they become fertile, there's selection pressures and stuff starts happening and they get choosier and everything else, which makes sense. So that's my little spiel about like, don't, becoming aware of your genes lets you choose your adventure a little bit more. Even if you don't have as much choice, you probably have a little more knowing like why something makes you angry or why you strive for a certain goal that maybe isn't actually aligned with what you want. You know?
Yeah. Why do we have these programs? Like, don't you want to see what programs you have running in the background? And why they might have been there before and whether you should listen to them now or whether they're, what is they called? Vestigial
yeah.
organs, vestigial subroutines in your genetic programming.
Yeah, things that made a lot of sense in the past and no longer make near as much sense, which I don't know if that, the sea turtle ocean example, like, is bordering on a.
What about salmon? Does that still, do you know about salmon? The upstream swimming, is that
insane.
Still, but is there a point to that, or is that old programming that they just don't know how to change? Seems like you could just relax downstream, make some eggs somewhere else, like get eaten by a bear at the end of the stream, just have a good tube ride, drink some natty ice or whatever.
You would think so. It's funny you should ask, because I was just thinking about salmon, and it's a new question occurred to me that's related, which is, so they have these. I have a great joke about salmon in my album My Big Break. By the way, it's super fun, but it's along these lines that they go through all of this horrific trouble, all of the reason that they go from the ocean back to where they were laid upstream in the river, is they're running into all of these incredible threats along the way, including these, epic scenes of bears and everything else. But what a lot of people, so everyone's seen that, but and probably know that they spawn. What a lot of people probably wouldn't know is that, and this isn't just, there's salmon that don't do that too. There's other species of salmon that don't do that, but they still do this same, where they're like putting all of their energy, both males and females, all of their energy, they turn on their stress response system, their sympathetic response system that shuts down their immune system and any long-term building projects, digestion, and if they stop eating, and it's just everything, just have cortisol just pumping through your system, just adrenaline just going, and then you get there, you get past the bears or whatever, you mate, and then that system never turns off. Not that it couldn't, but there's just no evolutionary selective pressure, because once you've mated, evolution doesn't, unless you can mate again, evolution can't do anything for you. So like there can't be any selection pressure.
The postman
one way or
has
another.
left. You can't mail anything to the future.
So it's done caring about you. So these salmon just start developing all these different cancers and stuff like that. And then they die with probably a horribly painful death over the course of, I think, a few days or something.
Damn, I've never thought of salmon cancer once.
Yeah.
I thought they would get eaten by bears or get fished, or that's it.
They think it's a bit. There is childhood cancer, but it's incredible.
Childhood salmon cancer. What a rough card to pull.
In humans. But
I was born a salmon and I got cancer. And you complain about traffic.
It's strange when it happens in humans, and fucking tragic. Sorry if a lot of people know somebody, but cancer in adulthood, that's the troubling thing, is like it probably just never had the opportunity to be selected out, because humans were just done breeding by the age most people start getting cancer. So evolution couldn't do anything to fix it. So that's another thing that we can potentially do with modern medicine and just figure out, the things that are falling apart. Like in the case of the salmon, if you could intervene and turn that sympathetic stress response off, you could theoretically just keep it alive and it could live out, another however long, which would be amazing.
That's a real status symbol, to be rich enough to have a cancer-free salmon that swims with the stream. It took $100 million to get this working, but look, I'm the only owner of this one.
Why?
You can come back next week. It'll be here.
Probably, that might be sexual selection. As that might be, that might be a test. That might be a test for
the person
both
that makes
the
it
males
that
and
far
females.
yeah, if you're fit, you would have made it this far. That means you can get it on.
I would think so, because otherwise, why risk everything? I mean,
what about the other fish though that don't do that? I guess they have other ways of selection pressure there, but no, it could be the race.
Yeah,
like you are the sperm race. Like forget the sperm doing the race thing. You are that.
Yeah. Oh, I just remembered I never talked about fusing.
Yeah, let's fuse it.
So I don't know much about it other than the ocean's fucking vast, and there's a lot of species out there that are lucky to bump into another one of their own in a lifetime. I see where this is going. You know, which is why like mushrooms will have 40,000 different genders, because it's like, you don't know what you're going to bump into out there. You don't know how long of a journey this is going to be. You better be ready to party with anything. And
this reminds me of a Ram Dass quote of, there will come a day where you will be delighted just to see the light of another being. Something like that. Like something about just wandering in pure darkness to where like one day, like it'll just be so good just to see any other being at all.
He must have been so sad on the day that he wrote that.
It's a pretty dark quote, and I don't know if he's referring to in the astral plane, like when you're not incarnated yet and you're going through the void into another incarnation or whoever what it is, but yeah, that always stuck with me. It's like, oh, you're just wandering the desert, and just like anyone, forget what gender I'm attracted to, just any, even if it's a new gender that I'm less attracted to than any of the genders I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
Another being.
Yeah. Just let me rub up against something. I have something to look at. But there's anglerfish, and some other fish that isn't clownfish, they'll do things where so a male happens to run into a female. In anglerfish, I think he like bites onto her and then just fuses his mouth parts.
Oh, he flies, into like, and several of them fly right into the body and get absorbed into it.
Yeah. They start getting like, I think in the case of the anglerfish, she actually just like, it's mostly just their mouth parts, and then she's kind of just dragging what looks like a dead fish along with her. But I don't even know how they're finding each other.
With the big light.
Much smaller.
The anglerfish has the big light bulb hanging.
Right.
I think that's why it's called angler.
Yeah.
Because it's got that big light bulb, and then you're just this little male fish, and you see the light in the ocean, and you're just like drawn to it like anyone would be. And they're specifically very drawn to it. And then I think your tail falls off. Maybe that's it. Like, much like the sperm. I think, the sperm tail falls off when it goes in the egg, and then just the genetic material starts swirling in with the egg and doing whatever life is, whatever that's all about.
I think you do now like become a part of her circulatory system. I know another fish, like their sides bump together, and same thing where the male's smaller and
Chariots of fire
absorbs into her, and then she'll pick up other dudes too. So like a lady that's been around town enough will just have like 7 different dudes absorbed into her, and that's just her life. And they're still alive, but all they do is just like make and deliver sperm.
Oh man, this would be horrifying to see, but I'm sure we'll see it one day. But someone making a visual representation of those animal mating patterns, but if humans were to do that, make it into a realistic 3D video of what if that was human mating pattern.
I feel like I'm kind of a fuser. I feel like at least certainly.
You fuse?
I think I fuse. Yeah, I think my default was fusing, and I'm just trying to get away from. I feel like.
So unpack that a little bit. Does that mean you get into whatever they're into? Like, oh, you're into Matchbox 20. I like Matchbox.
No,
20.
I mean like physically. Like I need to be touching, like a lady and like absorb. Like I'm cuddling all of. I've only.
It might
been
just
with
be your
one
love
lady.
language, though. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, physical touch is one of the languages, I think.
Yeah. That's definitely That's definitely mine. I've only met one lady that could keep up with my cuddling. So it's one of those things too. You got to find, there's so many different compatibility things, or like one person wants to cuddle, another doesn't. One person wants to have sex all the time, the other doesn't. And it's like, it's fine to want to have sex all the time. It's fine to not want to have sex all the time, but it kind of,
yeah, you clash
a little bit when it doesn't, and not everything can match up in life with anyone ever. So and probably opposites attract in certain things. I don't think there's a lot of research that shows that opposites really attract as much as the common saying, but there's stuff going on there.
I think we just notice the opposites and then say that opposites attract, and perhaps it's not really opposites so much as complementary, because clashing opposites aren't good, but complementary opposites are going to do well together.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I think we talked about, the kind of major hypnocompatibility gene, the smelling of the guy's shirts and smelling the genetic compatibility in I think the episode about the history of a behavior that we did a few weeks ago. So here's some of the basics of, because we covered went back and forth about Darwin and Wallace in last week's episode, and who was right, and is it just this utilitarian thing? How much female selection pressure? And I think that there's my guess is that females are calling a bunch of the shots. It's tough to say, but I think that there's a lot more sexual selection pressure than most people would ever imagine. And it's you can always tell by sexual dimorphism, which is like, do the two different genders in species where there are two genders, are they really different? Like, is one much larger than the other or whatever else? And because if they're the same, there's probably not a lot of sexual selection going on, or equal amounts of sexual selection or picking with each. But if there's sexual dimorphism, usually it's like a bird, where birds have the males will have like this really flamboyant display, females less so. They still get a little bit of the male stuff.
We don't get to see it though, from what I understand, like, because sometimes the male is like super beautiful, and then the female is just this regular brown bird or a gray bird, and you're like, what are you even doing here? And then but then you learn like they have some ultraviolet patterns that you can't see, and they're still not as beautiful as the males, because come on, we're the males. But but they have something.
Yeah, I mean, you would think in species like birds, where there's a fair amount of pair bonding and males sticking around and providing things, that males would do a lot more selecting of like, well, if I'm going to be hanging out for life, like, I'm going to be choosy as well.
Oh, I didn't know they hung out.
Yeah, in birds, birds are probably, in terms of like pair bonding and monogamy, and I mean,
penguins, I knew that, but not like robins or sparrows or hummingbirds or anything.
Yeah, your average bird is having like there's like 10-20% kind of cuckolding. So like
does that mean he's watching? Because I thought cuckolding, you have to be there watching it and enjoying it, not just like...
No, that's like the red pill stuff that got hijacked from kind of like memes.
No, not in a negative way. I'm saying like that's like literally, I thought that's the definition of the word.
Oh no, just raising children that aren't yours without knowing it. Oh. So you have like a robin, say, I actually don't know what robin specifically mating behavior is, but I would venture a guess that it's not too far from a lot of other birds.
I can't do a Robin Williams. I was trying to do a Robin Williams, but I don't have it.
They like basically it's like the 10s pair off with the 10s, 9s pair off with the 9s, 8s pair off with the 8s, and all the way down. And they're going to kind of pair bond ish for life. And birders used to, I think we probably know so much about birds just because there's bird watchers is such a thing. So there's just so much free data and labor and science happening, just like people doing it for a hobby.
That's nice of them.
Yeah.
It's the most wholesome hobby. There's no shooting it. You just literally observe it, and then you pull out your little card and then you check it.
Yeah. A lot of times you just capture it in your mind. You're just hunting for a memory in your mind.
Did you see The Simpsons where they're at the bird watching thing and then like a pigeon lands on the sill and then Mo sees it and it's like, pigeon, and then checks that off, and then he finishes his list. Like he's seen all the birds. He's like, I'm done now. And then he just leaves the bird watching society forever.
Pigeon's the last one.
Back in the good old days. I think that was the last season before it tanked. Which there's still some good gags in there, but it's a tired opinion to say decades. It's stupid now. Exactly.
So they'll pair off, but they'll be like socially monogamous. So they're paired up. However, there's like if you're a female like 4, you can go off and bang some dude that's a 8 or 9 or something like that, because if he doesn't have to like stick around to put in the labor to get the worms and everything like that to provide for the offspring.
For your ugly ass, yeah.
Yeah, no skin off his, no feather off his back. You don't want to be
a 4. Yeah, like if you're not a 7, 8, 9, or 10, like you might as well just be a 1, because then at least you're like, yeah, I'm the bridge troll. I'm the ugliest. But if you're a 4, you're not even interestingly ugly. You're averagely, forgettably ugly of a bird.
But you can go and get with a guy that's more attractive than you could bond with. You can get his sperm, go back and have your 4 mate raise the 8's children. Mm-hmm. And usually when that happens, it's like a little bit of the actual dads too, and a little bit, so it's like 20% of the guy that she cheated with.
Interesting.
When they started doing like DNA tests,
and they treat them all the same though, right?
Yeah, the guy doesn't know any better generally, but then
because they don't have to play catch with them. All they're doing is really providing. Isn't a lot of one-on-one. I imagine it's probably more going out and getting resources, bringing them back, and then leaving again. So you're not really doing a lot of face-to-face time with your kids.
Still going out, lugging around a lot of resources for...
Yeah. You're doing it for them, but not with them.
Yeah. So to do it for
like
some other...
doing that by our standards is you would be seen as not that good of a parent, which makes sense, because it's with us, it's not just about resources. But if you were being a good bird dad, it's like, what? I'm just going out on tour and working all the time, bringing back the bread. But yeah, of course I don't spend one-on-one time with my kids.
Yeah, that's being a fine. I think they like, depending on the species, will, do babysitting and stuff like that. But there's so that's the idea with I should go back to kind of some of the beginnings. So when we talked about last time how in sort of the 70s some of the sexual selection stuff started basically Russell Wallace was trying to say there's no such thing as sexual selection. What looks like sexual selection is just more survival of the fittest, and the males are just using this ornament as a way of proving how fit they are, so that in and of itself has utility. And then there's, for a really fit male to lug around a little extra weight or ornamentation or something like that, it might not be that big of a deal. But if you're less fit male, it might be really it might really impede on, you know, your ability to fly or whatever else. So some of the basics that came around in, I think, the 70s. So there's this really wacky character who I'm fortunate to have gotten to be friends with, actually, Robert Trivers, who is like this madman who figured out these like 3 crazy things, which was he thought of this. I'm just trying to find the years. Yeah, in 71, reciprocal altruism, which is like now just seems obvious, which is like
being nice and being nice back.
Yeah, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Like figuring out, he was pretty decent at math.
Can we say that instead of, hey, I scratch your back, you scratch mine? We'll instead say, hey, reciprocal altruism.
I do. That's how I talk. But most people look at me like I'm a lunatic when I do. I forget that sometimes I speak a whole different language because I also I don't talk that much to people. I talk to you and I talk to scientists. Outside of that, I have a couple of friends I chatted with on the phone a lot, but I just don't talk. Like at the pickleball court or whatever, like I'm a quiet-ish person. And so I sometimes forget that, like, oh yeah, people don't, like, the word reciprocal altruism isn't just intuitive to people. And so Robert Trivers is just like this madman. So he lives in Jamaica now. And that's how I met him, because I go to Jamaica.
How old's this cat now? Probably like 70, right? If he was doing good work in the 70s.
Jesus, he's
he
78.
must be 80. Oh, close to 80. I was close. So he was a young lad then in the 70s when he was coming up with this.
And he's a great guy. I think I don't know how much longer he has left, to be honest. But
I'll give him 2 years. We'll check back in on that.
He still likes to party. I can tell you that.
Okay, I'll give him 1 year.
He likes.
We have to pay attention because he's not going to be in the headlines. These are real scientists we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, he is a legend in the field. Like, almost most scientists in most fields would know who Robert Trivers is. And I've had some like Baileys with him and Red Stripe and wine. Those are like the 3 Jamaican.
Oh, I didn't know Bailey's was.
Yeah, I feel like every time I see him, he's drinking like a nip of Bailey's.
Oh, nice. Red Stripe is the first drink I had on this show.
Yeah, he does a little bit of day drinking, and I mean, what happened was he was a mathematician. I think his autobiography that he wrote was called Wildlife. So he ended up writing a bunch of stuff about the evolution of self-deception, which is like, this dude just kept on like innovating the field of evolutionary psychology and biology in really interesting ways. And he's crazy. He's like bipolar. He's like, was always like saying outrageous, controversial things. He like speaks his mind. He's like a bit of like a womanizer. He says inappropriate things that are like, he doesn't like mince words. Like in a playful, he's very funny. He has a very funny sense of humor, but he, he'll just like be at a science conference and just start talking about the like apropos of nothing, just start pontificating about the evolution of like vagina smell and stuff like that. Like just like some very like really, like maybe you share that little pet theory with like a couple, not like make an announcement because there's a couple ladies around.
Yeah, I don't think you can say vagina smell in any context without it being a little bit like, whether you're talking about good, bad,
I mean, he kind of
medium.
just likes, he likes pushing buttons a little bit. I think he's been in a psych ward a couple times. I like the guy. He's great. But he...
hey, that's you. You've been in a psych ward a couple times.
Yeah.
What if that's you?
I know. What if that's just me?
Like we go to Jamaica and you just put on a different hat and start drinking Red Stripe. We're like, hi, I'm Dr. Robert Trivers.
What is it? Shutter Island or whatever?
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Except it is, you can kind of tell.
Yeah.
As you're watching it. You kind of, it's one of those ones where the twist you figure out like maybe halfway through and then maybe a third way through if you're really good.
Well,
Great
hopefully
flick,
we
though.
didn't drive anyone insane with that spoiler alert. So yeah, 1971 reciprocal altruism, 1972 print. So here's what he did. He decided he didn't like math anymore. He had a real aptitude for it. And then he like got into biology a little bit. And then he like needed to do something as like a grad student. And someone was like studying lizards in Jamaica. And he's like, I want to go to Jamaica. Sure. And then he went to Jamaica to study lizards for a little bit and then just realized that he loves Jamaican women. Just loves. He's like, I'm just going to study lizards in Jamaica then for the rest of my life. Moved there just to get laid by Jamaican women. That's it. He has many Jamaican children.
He's never even seen a lizard.
He is
Just
quite the lizard
just his
expert,
trouser
actually.
lizard.
And then he revolutionized the field in a lot of really interesting ways, one of which, relevant to our conversation, is parental investment theory, which is now 50 years old. Oh my gosh.
The 70s being 50 years old still doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
70s is 30 years old, not 50 years old. I'm forever in that mind state. The 90s, that was 10 years ago. 80s, 20 years ago. 2017 is in the future.
Yeah, time keeps on chugging along at a sometimes horrifying rate.
Yeah. It's getting older. That's the fun of it.
Sex ratio determinization. Damn. 1973. That's another big one. Parent offspring conflict in 1974. Holy smokes.
These are, what are these? What is parent offspring?
Yeah, I'm going to get into them. I'm just like, I'm surprised that was like one. So each one of those, that was one a year. Like if anyone would have came up with any one of those, they would be a famous, like, or, every biologist would know who they are. He came up with one every year, 4 years in a row, that's amazing.
All from Jamaica, right?
Yeah, I think he was in.
That's after he left math and he said, fuck these X's and zeros and.
Yeah, but I think if I remember
signs.
right, he was telling me it had to do with like, he just found himself sitting around watching pigeons quite a bit at some university gig that he had. And he just like noticed things that males were doing and like pushing a female around or something like that. And he just got watching, not as a research project, just sitting watching pigeons for a really long time that were outside of his window, just gave him some
like
crazy
Tesla.
insights.
Pigeons have something going on with scientists. They have
got a lot
bond.
going on. They have, they move their head like that because it helps them see in 3 dimensions. Because they have an eye on each side. So we have 2 eyes. So you can, like, if you close one eye, it's like 2 different cameras, and then our brain can blend it together to get
binocular
a bit of
vision.
Yes, for a bit of the depth perception. And pigeons, because of their eyes, each one going straight out, they go like that, and then they're getting depth perception in the same way, comparing each one in real time. Pigeons do all sorts of weird stuff, and I think they're pretty easy to study too.
That's one of those ones where if you asked me to draw a pigeon, I wouldn't have drawn their eyes on the side unless I looked at a reference photo. But in my head, No.
Let me look.
Maybe somewhere in between. They're not as close together as us.
No, they're on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a little close together, but yeah, they're on the side.
It's like that thing. Have you ever seen when they ask people to draw a bicycle from memory?
Yes.
And just everyone is way off. Yet if you saw a bicycle in real life, you would know whether something is off. But for some reason, drawing it is like there's the wheel, the handles, and then let's just put weird guts in the middle. I don't know what's going on in the middle.
Some of those drawings are insane. It'll be like college kids that own a bike that like biked there. And they're like drawing the chain connected to like both wheels and not to the pedals and stuff.
Yeah, it's a death trap at best.
Those are, yeah, that's part of the kind of illusion of explanatory depth or whatever, where people don't have access to as much information as they think.
Yeah, I'm walking around with like 3 pieces of information without my Google. Oranges are orange, carrots have a green thing at the top of it, and you sit in chairs, you don't stand in them. It's the 3 pieces of information I got.
So I think most relevant for Valentine's Day and mating behavior would be parental investment theory.
The evolution of vagina smell. You got it.
Yeah.
Started with day 1.
So it's as simple as this. Whichever gender in a given species has the highest cost of raising offspring is therefore going to be the most selective, because whichever one's doing more work is going to like care more and be more discriminating. Whichever one is doing less work is going to be less discriminating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it happened like, 1.2 billion years when male and female zygotes started evolved and males and females started popping off. It happened at first, it'd be like 2 egg-like things, and it didn't take long at all for there just to be a size difference in the zygote, and so the male ones just started becoming smaller, and it was a quantity over quality thing, and the female ones became larger and larger and needed more and more energy to actually like bring the thing to fruition. And so right from the beginning, there was selection pressure in terms of like, there's like weird chemical signatures and stuff. I think that eggs even in humans are using to pit. It's not necessarily just like the first sperm that gets there.
Is a zygote like, so you're saying those size differences happen before the gender? Because I thought we start off as genderless, or we all, which one is it? At least in humans, we all start off as...
Oh yeah, that's everything.
Yeah, you start off as genderless, and then gender is formed like, I don't know, a third of the way through or whatever it is. But you're saying the size differences happen even before that?
Yeah, and then, so a sperm and an egg need to bond to make life, and then that first life doesn't have a gender, but very soon afterwards, a gender is determined. At some stage in the development, the gender is determined, and then that gender will either have sperm or egg in most species.
Did we already talk about the egg selecting versus the most common narrative is the fastest sperm gets there first, but it's actually more like the egg is choosing the one it wants most.
Way more like that.
Yeah.
If you ask me, males in most species are just spaghetti being thrown against the wall, and ladies are looking and being like, okay, that one sticks a little bit. And like where the wall is in a given generation, what type of spaghetti is going to stick against it, what kind of like coating that wall has on it is always changing. And so there's not going to be like one spaghetti that's always perfect through all of time, generally speaking, in most species. And so females are kind of just like queuing into all of these cues more, whereas the male side of things is just like, whatever, I'll just bang whatever. Like we talked about turkeys last time, and this is this is way more complicated. Like turkeys, for example, they'll have like Lex or leaks. I've read these words and I'm not sure how they're pronounced sometimes. Yeah, it's where males line up to be selected by females, and in turkeys it's brothers. So like either way you win, because if you and I are brothers, and so we each share 50% of our genes. So if either one of us ends up having offspring, a quarter of one of our genes, still makes it. For me, 50% of my genes, but a quarter of your genes would still be going in, and vice versa. And so there's not as much competition, and so there's all sorts of stuff going on. But they tried to figure out what before they figured out the gizzard thing. I think it was turkeys where they're trying to figure out what the hell a male turkey, so they figured all this out, like, oh, the female's looking for this plumage, all of this, like really taking her time, figuring out, being incredibly choosy. She's the one that needs to make the egg, raise it, sit on it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I don't think the males stick around. Males, on the other hand, they tried to like hone in on what they're after by just constructing a fake turkey, which was like a foam ball with some feathers and like a fake head on it. And the male just banged the hell out of the thing. And
the head doesn't even need to be attached to it. If I'm remembering correctly,
yeah, you can make the tail like wonky or like a mohawk or something, and they'll just kind of look at it weird, be like, well, all right, I don't know quite where to put it anymore, but I'll try to give this thing a ride.
Yeah,
and then,
the female, her turkey's like looking at the work history and like checking references and everything, and then the male one, it's not even checking if it's not a foam ball.
Yeah, so
the
what
head
kind
falls off halfway.
Things are selected, like females on a lot of species are kind of taking cues from other females because there's more to vet. Any females that have had more time to vet, then it's like, oh, well, this lady's already gone through the process of like the interview it's like, it's like a job hunter or a headhunter, someone's like, oh, this is like a good employee already. Let's just snake that one away rather than take a chance on some new dud that's embellishing their resume.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
You remember that Patrice joke of women go from the top down. Like, what do you do? What's your job? What kind of car do you drive? Are you reliable? And then men start with, do you have a pussy? And then work your way up to, can you read?
Yeah. And it depends. So it's really like context specific too, because if you're looking for a life partner, you're going to be way choosier. It doesn't matter what gender you are. If you're planning on being with someone for the rest of your life, you're going to probably have aligned interests and intelligence and humor and blah, blah, blah. If you're looking for a one night thing, yeah, I mean, if you think about if you go to Mardi Gras and a male and female get together at Mardi Gras, that dude might like be off, the night later, go back home and live a life having no idea that he impregnated a lady, and now that lady has to what is like $250,000 offspring and time or whatever, and all of the other externalities that come along with having a child too. And so there's going to be, in terms of a one night stand, there's probably going to be way more selection pressure, especially if a woman's ovulating, than a guy in humans is what this theory would be kind of predicting. This is the thing that we can override by like, oh, we have birth control now. We have all of these other things. Like if we got rid of STDs, there's no reason why we couldn't all just be banging all of the time, consequence free.
It's going to get strange when we get there, because then it's going to go into weird spaces of
oh yeah,
because like we're still going to have the remnants of the puritanical structure that did have a purpose before.
Absolutely.
Or at least some purpose. But then if there's no STDs and no or 100% safe birth control, like what is that society going to look like?
Yeah. I mean, there's like, so just because there's like no consequences in STDs or offspring, like evolution's kind of determined that I'm not going to be super interested in having sex with like a 90-year-old dude, you know, like you can probably guess that that's not going to be a preference. So that not because that's good or wrong or bad or anything else, just because evolution wouldn't have favored that very many times.
Yeah. Lemonparty.org.
Lemonparty.org. There's always going to be some outliers out there, but generally speaking, that's not going to be the case. And we're still going to be kind of evolutionarily and biologically primed toward being attracted to things for certain evolutionary reasons, well beyond the time that those evolutionary reasons even hold true in our mind. Because we can whip up birth control or get online dating or have sex robots or whatever else, and these things can happen. Why not all three? Those whole worlds could change dramatically in a decade. For the brain to evolve would take probably 10,000 years a minimum.
We haven't even really acclimated to we haven't even acclimated to horseback riding yet, and it's over.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we're not acclimated to use a VCR, and it's already over. It's already on to the next thing.
Well, we've now just like built an environment that just runs itself. You know, and it's just like going on, and it's just evolving. So now the environment's just leaving us behind because it can just evolve without, like, it doesn't necessarily need to wait up for us. We're a constraint, you know?
Yeah.
But
that's the, it makes you think of, are we going to be a spacefaring species, or are we just going to retreat further into our own thing, like hack our system to where we're just living in the little metaverse thing?
I think metaverse. I think we would be. I think it would be.
It's probably both. It's metaverse, and then I'm stealing this from some sci-fi book, but like you don't go in the spaceship, but then your consciousness goes on the computer on like the size of a Pepsi can. And then the Pepsi can goes to Mars. You don't send humans with flesh to Mars. Like, that's so many.
That's the craziest thing about the idea of like, there's so many wrong ideas about like little green aliens coming down in a ship to visit us. One is that they always like look like us in some weird way. Like, why are they bipedal necessarily? Why are they like us, but just bigger brains? You know, like weird things like that, where we just project and anthropomorphize aliens just like we do to other species.
It's us in the future, probably precognition, us in the future. Like, the smaller mouth makes sense. The losing more hair makes sense. The bigger eyes with the blackness to shield off the UV and all that stuff. It does. You could make a case for why the little green men are future humans, and we're just like getting weird visions of it somehow.
And I love making a case for that. There's this fantastic, just absolutely amazing thing on Netflix.
Alien Worlds.
Yeah.
Alien Worlds. I haven't seen all of it, but I've tuned in. I need to recontinue. Oh, and another theory, the opposite of the one I just said. I don't know if this has been debunked or super bunked, but the alien abductions thing, one theory is that it's repressed memories from when you're a baby. So you have no real memories, but you're on a cold metal table. They're like prodding at you. You can't form the faces yet. So they just look like these weird glowing things, but you just have a memory of like, I was prodded at and abducted and then dropped back off.
I hope so.
And not necessarily in a molestation way, just like a regular doctor, and you just don't remember because you were one. Maybe it's both. Maybe some of them are that, and some people were actually abducted and prodded at.
Yeah, I had. Sorry, I just got distracted because Robert Sapolsky just emailed me to line up a time to come on Here We Are.
Nice.
So I get very excited about things like that. All right, so I had
it's destined to happen. He didn't have a choice. He was destined to come back on and talk about whatever he's about to come back and talk about.
The thing with aliens, to further that, I always just think, why? Like there are height. They're not like the height of giraffes. They're not the size of like an ant. There are, like, why not? If you want to explore space, I think the way to go about it, you put on the VR, you send 10,000 drones out there and you just observe things. Like, if there was aliens here, I think they'd be in like invisible drones or something like that, like observing and zipping around in ways that we couldn't detect or something. That's
maybe they've got blind spots.
Maybe,
because they're not done yet. Like, oftentimes when we're saying like, oh, an alien wouldn't do blank because they would have figured out blank already. But then maybe we have some insights they don't. But mainly I agree with you. I don't think the little green men coming from outside makes that much sense. Makes more sense that they'd come out of the water or that they're interdimensional, and it's, I don't know. But I've never even seen one.
Interdimensional makes more sense. Like sending some, because why even have a body? Like, why not have, like, okay, hands, but why not just have my hands fly around and grab things for me? Why are they attached to this stupid body? Why won't my hands just shoot off of me, go and grab something and then stick it in my face if I want to eat something or whatever? That's what I don't understand about that.
Maybe they're playing a game and they're remembering what it was like to have a body or something. But it's not that far out to think that they could fold time and they're just us from the future and then they know how to fold time, like the example of the ant on the paper, and you can just fold it and it's making the full loop.
I can get down with that. I can get down with time folding for sure. Yeah.
I wish I've seen one. I haven't seen a single UFO, not one.
That's
like,
a bummer.
I've seen a satellite, but you can tell it's a satellite. Satellites just move. It's a little star that moves.
I hope for you get to see one. If there's a choice, if there's a UFO, only Shane or Ramin gets to see it, I'm going to be like, give it to Ramin. Give Ramin the UFO. Yeah.
I'll get you something nice from the ship. I'll get you one of their anal probes. Got to clean it first, though.
What if it does just all sorts of other amazing things, but they've just only been using it to probe our anuses with?
It's like we're the worst of our species. What do you think we're doing here? You think the best of our species would come to Earth and study you?
I've been, so all right, back to some of the minimal parental investment theory stuff. So then a lot of that gets into what we talked about last week, which was so I was kind of preemptively pushing back on this to advance more of what Darwin was thinking, but Russell's utilitarian ideas of like everything's adaptive had a real foothold in evolutionary thinking for a long time. And there was this guy, was it Zahari? Out of Israel that had this, Ematz Zahavi. It's too bad he passed away a few years ago. I always wanted to get him on the show.
Rest in power, Amit Sabadi. I like saying rest in power to everyone. Like there's a little 3-year-old white kid that dies of cancer or something. Rest in power.
so he came up with this idea of the handicap principle that was like all the craze for a while, and is still, it's not like it's discredited. It's that, like a lot of things, just the models have become more refined. You know, we found some blind spots in it.
It's got some pending lawsuits, but nothing. It hasn't been. What is it? Acquitted?
Yeah, it's. Yeah,
not lawsuits for real, of course, but you know, it's like you've got the theory, and then it's not discredited, but it's not made into law yet, or not even made into theory. It's still like, okay, here's some objections to it, pending objections. Yeah.
So this handicap principle, and I absolutely love it, and I think it has a ton of explanatory power. I was just trying to caution on the last episode that like it's not everything. Sometimes you hear these ideas and it's like, for me anyway, they were like mind blowing when I first started learning about them. And it's like, it explains all of it.
This is the only tool I need forever. And then 3 years later, like, what am I using this drill to hammer in?
Exactly. So the handicap principle is that now that you have this sexual selection pressure, now that you have a female in almost every species, there's like seahorses where the males, like the female inserts the eggs into the male, and he raises them to fruition. And so then he does like way more of the selection. They still dance and stuff, and it's very romantic, but
you hear the Jim Gaffigan bit of that, of like that was probably some scientist that didn't want to be corrected and be like, that is the male seahorse. And then it's like, oh, that one's given birth, Bill. It's like, the male gives birth.
Yeah.
You're fired.
Yeah, I mean, there's like some truth in that, of like what we consider male and female in the animal kingdom. But in terms of the zygotes, it's if you were to dissect a female, she would have eggs in there. If you were to dissect a male, he would have sperm, and the female inserts eggs into him that he then raises. And there's not many other species that do that. Like hyenas. No, hyenas do. Hyenas are.
The females run shit and hunt, but they still bear the children, right?
But they still bear the children. I think they have horrifically painful childbirth too. But that's
why they have such a great sense of humor, and they're laughing at everything. They have to, because they got it rough.
I think there's a lot of like not a lot, but I think there's some freshwater fish that, for whatever reason, in freshwater, males do a lot of the kind of like egg sitting sort of, like
Nemo's dad
gets some sort of weird layer, and then the female comes in and lays her eggs there, and the male hangs out and guards them and protects it and everything else. And so he would have probably a lot more of the pressure. I mean, it's tough to say. There's like,
that's like they start off divorced when you think about it. Like they're not meeting together and mingling. It's like one lays the egg, drops it off, and then the male comes by and takes care of it, and then later, but they never even see each other face to face. So you start as a divorced couple.
Yeah, but there's also like there is there's confusing stuff. There's like there's a species of hummingbird that will have a territory of these plentiful flower. Hummingbirds don't just get nectar from any flower generally. Generally, there's flowers that evolved alongside the hummingbird. The hummingbird got so well adapted at spreading its pollen that the flower was like, all right, we'll just evolve to you and hold all of your resources and not give anything to any other species. That's why they have the weird flying patterns and everything. Like other things can't get in there. And they like little upside down bells and stuff like that.
Just so they can kind of like
fly upside down. Yeah, they evolved together. And so males will get a territory and a female will come in, and then, but he'll like run her off a little bit and like make sure that she's actually really wants to be there.
Hard to get.
And really stick around, because otherwise she can just come get some nectar, not, not mate with him and just take his nectar and leave. So you don't know if it's that or if it's just part of her selection pressure that she's selecting for a dude that's territorial. So like there's something about, being chased off that's actually attractive to her. That's part of, all of these things you can't tell exactly what the species is thinking.
There's so many chicken or the egg things, like co-sympathetic. No, I won't even try to make the word.
Like co-evolutionary.
There's not one that is the first. They're both doing it together, and then it's like, but who threw the first stone? Well, it's not really like that. It's so gradual that you can't really say one was the first stone. It was just kind of shimmied its way, like vibe towards each other until they were like tangled together and co-evolved to being just meant for each other.
Yeah, and sometimes to like a horrifying result too. Probably the reason why there's not more flamboyant species out there, not because they didn't evolve, but probably because they like crashed at some point. The runaway process of sexual selection of like a female only going for the guy with the most ridiculously unnecessary thing, like got so ridiculous that the species just collapsed. They couldn't survive anymore. That probably
imagine
happened
a peacock
over and over
the size of an elephant, but the animal is the size of an ant, but it's like ant size, but mostly like flamboyant stuff.
And then the other thing probably has happened as well, where like maybe some of the early flight came from feathers that were in dinosaurs originally selected just for looks alone. And then flight took off, co-evolved independently many different times. Like sometimes it was like a thing that would have like a webbing in its arms to like trap prey, like a cape. It would be like, gotcha. And then once it had that, it became like, what else can you do with these things?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
man. And we still haven't, as a society, accepted the feathered dinosaur model. Like we're in our head, we're like, they're these different colors. They're like giant lizards, and here's the toy of it, and it's like Jurassic Park. But have you seen that embryo? They found an embryo in the fossilized womb of a dinosaur or something, and it just looks like a little bird.
Yeah, there's feathers. There was feathers out there for sure, and some of them might have been for section. So you can have something that starts as utility, then ends up advertising utility by like this handicap effect of which the handicap principle is, a costly, honest signal. So the heavy tail feathers or whatever else, or something that's like a lot of times just a really costly color in a bird, or a costly to like make the songs or whatever is advertising. There's a cost in making a bunch of racket. There's no reason to make a bunch of racket usually, because other things will eat you if you make yourself known.
Do you think the sign spinning Abraham Lincoln or Statue of Liberty person outside of a tax place is handicap principle? Because you could have easily just put a sign there, but the fact that you're hiring a human being to be ridiculous for hours, like spinning the sign, it's like, hey, we're pretty good. We can afford to just have someone. We don't need them in the building even. Most people just need people in the building to work. We have one outside being ridiculous.
Well, that's the idea of the Red Queen, the running to stay in the same place, is sort of that happens throughout all of evolution, but it happens in terms of the evolution of marketing and stuff as well. So you go from MySpace to then Facebook's the cool one. Now my parents are on Facebook, so I got to go to Twitter, and now my parents are starting to get on Twitter, so I better run over.
Twitter's been dead since 2011.
Yeah. And I'm still beating a dead horse, though.
No, everyone's still on it. The use is just up, stock market value, but it's dead.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
dead.
Like, no one does. Like, Rob Delaney got famous from Twitter. Like, no one gets famous from Twitter. I can't think of a single person where it's like, oh, and then Twitter took off for them, and then it just doesn't happen.
No, there's shit my dad says. There's the Wendy's account. There's Rob Delaney. That's it.
So there's going to be like, something will happen like banner blindness, where in the beginning websites would have like sale 30% off blinking, and then it eventually just subconsciously trained people to like, hey, if you just see a big blinking box, just ignore it.
Yeah,
just ignore all big blinking boxes. And so
now
then
we
they
get
had
to ignore
evolve.
Humans. Ignore that actual human being making $7 an hour spinning that sign.
We're doing crazy dances with a sign, dressed in an outfit and everything.
In an area with very little traffic. I'm
If
the
it's
only
a flex,
car
it's
driving
a
by.
weird flex.
Yeah.
It's such a like.
Aren't most flexes weird? Like that's
most
even
flexes are weird, but I don't know, like a phone store flex though. Like I don't know.
What about a store with spinning sign people? Like you can buy your own spinning sign person, but then they also have a person outside spinning a sign, advertising, and then inside is a bunch of people. It's a good art project, I guess. Little art installation if I was rich and bored.
Maybe this is part of International Mum Day, which we're going to talk about next week, where like people to get ready for it, make videos of them like spinning I don't know.
I mean, so much of when we think about how ridiculous can we get with it, it starts reminding me of the Cacophony Society, which eventually became Burning Man. Have I told that story? How we've all seen someone with a cup of coffee on their car. They forgot it, and then they drive off, and then the coffee falls. Or before they drive off, everyone is like trying to show you that, like, hey, you left your coffee on your car. Get it? This guy, I forget who it was, but he glued a cup of coffee to the top of his car and then just drove around with it everywhere. So he would just get honked at all day. Like people are trying to tell him that he's got coffee, but he glued it on there. And that evolved to putting a pot of coffee. It evolved to like putting a whole coffee maker thing on the top of the car. And then that evolved into the parade floats that Burning Man has. So Burning Man originated out of a coffee
that
cup.
Is beautiful. Amazing. And talk about decadence that could easily collapse, and it sort of does. It collapses itself each time, but it jumps the shark, because now the wealthy can just go and
they have private security and their own little Wi-Fi hotspots. And I've never even been. Have you been?
No, I haven't.
No.
I'd like to, but I'd like to do it in like an someday. RV. Oh, a mom camp.
Yeah.
A mom camp at Burning Man? That would be amazing.
Yeah, and it'll be all nude except your genitals, your ass, and your torso, and your shoulders, and I think it's above the knee, but other than that, it'll be an all nude camp.
I think that you can wear whatever you want, but you got to cover your knees. No matter what. No knees. And it's disgusting if people show their knees, like real public shame.
Yeah, it would be like showing the inside of a diarrhea ass.
And that's what you say to people. Well, that gets us into like culture and sexual selection of and like mimetic thing, the way in which cultural transmissions then shape us. So there's all of these so much in the way that sex started long before the brain, and then the brain comes along and then starts getting involved in the reproduction parts, first finding a mate, then like driving through different emotional processes or reflexes or tendencies. It starts, the brain likes getting its fucking fingers in everything. And now we have sex kind of completely detached from reproduction. Like now we have sex for sex sake, as far as we're consciously aware of.
That's the goal for a lot of people.
Yeah. And so there's like, imagine, so the way that I sometimes like to think about memes is, imagine you have like two different communities or civilizations. Say there's like 1,000 people in each, and they're on two different sides of a volcano. It's the exact same. It's a perfectly symmetrical volcano. If it goes off, the same thing happens to both parties, and it goes off here and there, rumbles here and there, and each gets and each party doesn't know the other one's on the other side. So there are these two like islands of people. This is how like speciation and stuff happens when you just take any kind of population and separate it. And it's
already a good Pixar premise.
Yeah. And so this is being a little ridiculous because it's like, interfering with all of these other biological mechanisms that are happening, but it I think the point holds. So if you say, so a lot of our culture then, from the way that I view things, a lot of our culture emerges from just like our idea of like liking sex evolved from a need for replicating. Our cultures emerge as like either sexual selection pressures or utility pressures or social bonding pressures or whatever. So we've covered like the Halloween episode and winter solstice, where you see these clear marks in seasons that you celebrate, you categorize with this celebration, and you mark this point, and kind of, it's an opportunity to shift your cultural practices and attitudes for the upcoming winter or whatever. Spring, harvest time is here, blah, blah, blah. So in that same way, I think much of when people are like, oh, well, we just behave that way because it's how we are raised, or you saw it in a movie, or that's culture or whatever. I think it's also important to think how much of it just evolved as an aspect of our genes, as an aspect of our inner drives. And then there's feedback loops from that, because we also do take into account culture. So then in that same way, it can have these runaway selection effects. So back to the volcano. So on one side, on culture A, you tell them, there's a volcano monster. The reason why the volcano goes off is because there's a volcano monster in there. And the thing that upsets the volcano monster is children. So don't have children. And you won't have, and the volcano monster won't punish you. And then on the other side, you have a whole culture that come up with the idea like, hey, you know what the volcano monster loves is a bunch of children. So just have a bunch of children, and then the volcano monster won't punish you. And so if you then, on the celibate side, whenever the volcano starts to rumble, people are going to be like, hey, who's fucking around here? Someone have a kid they're not telling us about? And then on the other side, if
Who's
the
not fucking
volcano
around here?
rumbles. Yeah, like, hey, we're not having enough kids. We need to crank more kids out. Maybe the volcano wants a kid. Like, let's give it a juicy one, like a fertile female that's never been touched. We'd all like this female. This is our most valuable human resource. Let's just, here you go, toss it in the volcano as an offering. And, you know, you come up with various
Virgin
traditions
sacrifice,
and stuff.
child sacrifice. Yeah.
Right. And so, and the more costly, the better, even though you're throwing it at just randomness.
It's a tribute.
Yeah.
Like to the Godfather, or like in the new Boba Fett show, you're paying tribute to the volcano so it doesn't blow up.
And the more the cost, the more the placebo effect, because it had to work, you know. Otherwise, why would you be just throwing
if it works,
gorgeous virgin in a volcano if it weren't to please the volcano?
Yeah.
God, that would be insane.
Yeah, and if it doesn't work, you didn't do it enough. And if it did work, then we did the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've already decided it works, then you're not going to think anything else.
And so you know, if both cultures probably aren't going to be perfect, and there's going to be like some wiggle room in there and everything, but say they hold pretty closely to this tradition, which culture ends up doing better? The Kidland. The other one is going to be extinct in a generation or two if it's actually following this law.
They're extinct and they didn't even have a good time. That town sucks.
And say if there was like a third culture that just didn't believe in, they didn't get any, there's a control condition where they didn't get any volcano monster story at all. Maybe they're just kind of like reproducing, like, you know, average or something, but the one that hears that the volcano monster loves children is just banging out kids as fast as they can. It's what their whole culture is about. Then that idea itself is now in a way leading to the replication of genes. Like that idea that isn't tangible, it's not a physical thing in any way, it's just an invisible cultural transmission. It's only passed through our mouths and stories and stuff. That invisible, intangible thing is controlling how and determining how quickly genes spread. So then genes get attached to just ideas and within culture, and then they start then there becomes feedback loops, and they start living lives of their own. And then there's selection pressure for different cultural ideas and stuff too, because like how much of it has utility, how much of it is sexual selection, how much of it is just beautiful and decadent. And this is where all of it gets just so insanely messy and complicated that you want to throw up your hands and be like, who knows what's going on? But there's something that's like, what was the thing I was thinking about? It's very much like a peacock. Is it a giant aegis?
Giant aegis. Sounds Irish. Giant aegis.
Giant aegis.
Or no, haggis. Haggis is Scottish, right? The stuffed sheep guts or whatever that is, whatever haggis is. Write in if you're Irish or Scottish. Write in and tell us your favorite haggis preparation method for a chance to win $5 off Jiffy Lube Skittles.
Oh, they get Jiffy Lube?
Yeah, about $5 off Skittles only purchased at Jiffy Lube. So you got to find one that has that in the impulse buy section.
Wow.
But I'll get it for you.
So Argus.
Yeah. Argus.
So yeah, the Argus, it has a plumage and everything, but it hasn't been. It's hard to see mating, but you can find the feathers of dead ones and everything else. And the males have their feathers are like so beyond the peacocks.
It's hard to see mating because it's covered in feathers.
No, they're just like really
private.
They're very, very private. They stick away from a lot of things. So
no OnlyFans. Gotcha.
To study them until now that there's like drones and cameras that you can set up and everything, it was people would like hang out in a trench for like 6 months at a time waiting to like catch this thing. The birders are crazy, man. But yeah, it has this big plumage where it has each of its feathers have these balls on it, and the balls are like they're 3-dimensional, so they have like shading on the bottom, so they look like they stick out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They look like spheres.
Oh,
they're decorated to look like spheres. It's strange to think, well, how did each one of those steps happen along the way? Why not just like a flat sphere thing? And then there's ridges of the tail that are a different color that are also beautiful. And so like maybe they happen in step or whatever. But the female always looks like fairly unimpressed looking at this. Like if you see it, it's breathtaking. It's majestic. But the females always look they're like, whatever. That don't impress me much. But there's something odd about it's almost. So like, what is she selecting there if it's not necessarily costly? Each one wasn't showing another cost necessarily, and it's not advertising like some extra. It doesn't have utility. Maybe it does. Maybe it's like can be used to scare predators or something. I doubt it. So I think there might be something that is attractive. So we're just like evolutionary theorists needed to see patterns where they weren't. And every scientist like picks up on patterns where it's the idea of being fooled by randomness. We all perceive patterns in random data, make correlation causation errors, things like that. We all do it. And, I would think other species are doing it as well. So maybe there's something really impressive and sexually selected for that's like a pattern that's impressive and hard to make and looks really meaningful and also has no meaning. So it's like confusing in some way, and there's like there's something that draws you to it. It's like my first love was Nirvana and Kurt Cobain, and Kurt would have like one meaningful line and then another like nonsense line, and back and forth, like intermittent rewards. Trying
to think of an example of that. Let's see. Come as you are, just
because you're paranoid don't mean they're not after you. Like a fantastic line, and then like gotta find a way,
oh,
it's just like a thing that
just a catchy chorus,
sounded good.
And then it devolves into him just screaming by the end of that. Get away.
Yeah, and I used to listen to all the raw tapes and stuff, so he would just combine different songs together and everything. And he said in his diaries that that's what he liked. He intentionally enjoyed writing like one meaningful line and then one nonsense line that just rhymed or whatever. Yeah,
I got to read his dies.
They're pretty good. I mean, for like a 15-year-old or whatever. But it's pretty interesting.
Not just any 15-year-old though.
Yeah, exactly.
Anne Frank wasn't even 15 at all.
So
or like us for a 14-year-old. Or maybe she was 15. I don't know.
I don't know either. But is there something about seemingly meaningful patterns that are intentional, that are actually random, like aren't attached to, like, one thing doesn't mean in the same way that, like, if the last 2 times there was an earthquake, it was a Wednesday, you think like earthquakes are more prone to happen on a Wednesday. Are there like, we all do that in ways that we can't possibly be privy to because our brain just overperceives things.
But we have to remember that chance has no memory. So if you roll 1 dice and it shows a 6, and you roll the dice 6 more times and that shows a 6, still has no meaning. But it does, because the dice are loaded.
So like that sounds great. It seems like it means something. Does it mean anything at all? Or is the fact that it actually doesn't mean that much make it more attractive in some way? Because there's like, when
you have time to make meaninglessness.
Yeah, that, and it's also just draws the mind in, because you're like, what's that about? What's that, like when someone misspells something?
The strategy of taking your pants off in the fight because it just confuses the other person. I just saw that in a video where the guy didn't want to fight the other guy because he just took all his clothes off.
Exactly. So I've just been thinking that more, because in this idea of null hypothesis is like, first, before you think about what's explaining a connection between this and that, why don't you first consider, what if there is actually no connection at all? And so I think about this in terms of like peacocking, which I've seen work even in myself. Like I've had, when I was in England, I bought a silly top hat for a goof. And I found like myself getting way more female attention than
Would it
normal.
Start with the hat, or it was like the hat, they wouldn't even bring it up. They would just go up to you.
It depended on the situation. Well, there was also, so there's like an international thing too, but then it's also, there's a lot of like mate copying. So if you just, I haven't read any of those like player or game books or whatever those, what's that one, Neil Strauss or something like that?
I don't know. Are we talking about like negging and stuff?
Yeah. That sort of thing. Like if you were looking for an evolutionary thing like that, it would make sense to, if you just had a couple ladies around to start with, like in profile pictures, if you have a guy around, like just by himself or in front of a fancy car or with a couple ladies will often rate the guy being more attractive if they have like a couple ladies around them, because it's like, oh, those ladies must have already like done some research. There must be, even if you don't, normally like the dude has weird eyebrows or something, that's almost better, because then it's like, well, what are they seeing? That's peculiar.
On a similar note, but not the identical note, did you ever hear Matt Willis's joke of like, why do women wear like such beautiful earrings? Like, why would you want to distract from your face? Like, if it was me, I would put earrings as two ugly people like on each side, and then people would come up and be like, ooh, those bitches are nasty. But the one in the middle is pretty all right. Just wear earrings of ugly people.
So I don't know. I've just been pondering this lately of like maybe some of these things that I love chatting about so much, in terms of it's so much fun to hear a study where someone's shirt smells a certain way and that attracts this person, or gender difference between regret of sexual partners or something like that. But how much of that is actually there and how much of it is just random, something else happening. And as I think about things being more and more random, I just think like, man, we do just find ourselves drawn to so much, like going back to football. Like football is so random. And so if you knew exactly how the game was going to go, you just wouldn't be nearly as interested. You know, it's the randomness of it that you're drawn to in a lot of ways. So
yeah, not complete random, but so many random things that you can't possibly calculate how it would turn out. Because I always have a problem with true randomness, but I know we're not talking about true randomness.
Yeah.
But like relative randomness. Like the way a perfect example is the dice roll. The dice roll is not random, but it is random because there's no way we would be able to calculate it with our fingers and us imagining what the wind resistance is. But Lieutenant Commander Data can do that because he's an android. He knows that if he throws the dice a certain way, it'll appear random, but he can get 6s every time.
Yeah. Right. Well,
So
look at the side of the coin that's up when someone flips it, and a 51% chance that it's going to be on that one.
So you got a 1% edge.
Got 1% edge.
Or is that a 2% edge because you're also taking away from the bottom?
1% edge. And then I believe if you spin a coin, you have an edge that it's going to be tails because it's a little head heavy.
Because of the design.
Yeah, because of the design.
But they're changing those designs. We're getting Rosa Parks instead of Washington or something. Maybe that's just the $20 bill, but
you'd think it'd still hold.
That's true, because a head is more than the design of what's on the back of it, a building, or no, an eagle.
I don't know. It's like the Illuminati, something or other, right?
Yeah. Can you really blame like people that lose it to conspiracy? There's just so many things you can. I can't blame anyone. There's so many weird things that you can go down rabbit holes and put meaning into it.
Plus, it's so exciting when you find your own, and like you find over time, it doesn't matter if you've actually been like digging in a dumpster for a rotten half-eaten apple. It feels like gold when you finally find the thing and you hold on to it.
But I say this all the time. It's Tim Dillon's line, but people start off thinking conspiracy is like a series with an ending, like in a big finale where it gets revealed. But it's actually a soap opera, and it just goes on forever, and you're never going to get the thing. The goalpost just keeps moving forever, so you just stay in that soap opera.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is at least more in line with what I would love for people to start considering more is the emergent properties of these, because very, very rarely is the situation ever that some sneaky person is coming and telling one half of the volcano side to have babies and the other half to not have babies. That weird idea is just emerging around in different ways. You give enough, like you throw enough randomness out there, and different ideas are going to emerge to try to explain things that are very difficult to explain. And then some of those ideas go on being passed through time, especially if they're like sexually appealing or whatever, you know, if someone can spin an incredible tale that doesn't actually have a connection to anything, so it can't be falsified, it can't be ever proved wrong, nothing, it's just like an amazing sounding tale, there's going to be a lot of selection pressure for that, even if you don't fall for it yourself. Like here's a last little Valentine's Day gift. I happened to see, like in terms of gift giving. So there's a nursery web spider. I didn't talk about this last time, I don't think.
Nope.
So this nursery web spider, so, you know, same situation. Females doing a lot of the selecting. that don't impress me much sort of situation. Guy in that species, to woo the female, will often bring her a meal. So we'll go catch a fly, and then we'll wrap the fly in some sort of webbing, and then go and bring it to the female. And usually, like, the bigger the meal, at least this is how I always read about it. The bigger the meal, the the more the chance he gets to, like, get his weird egg sac out of one of his arms and put it into her or whatever.
Wait, his egg sac or his sperm packet?
Or sperm packet, I mean. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying. And
yeah, we don't want him going out there looking for egg packets.
No.
Throw him off.
And so there's... So the guy will even wrap in his silk. He'll even wrap the fly or whatever up and make a nice little gift for her. And the idea was always like, well, you can add some extra webbing, to make it look like a bigger gift than it actually is. And then it takes the lady a little while longer.
First guy that thought of that was probably like, I am a fucking genius. It's like, this fly is nothing unless jump cut to him carrying a giant thing that he needs, like a friend helping him move it in, like a couch. Herman, you shouldn't have gotten me that. How did you afford this? Don't worry about that.
It's worse than that even. Because so they pretty much, like, any female that they can come across that they can find a gift for, they have a shot. And so they'll be in lots of situations where they're quick scrambling to find a gift. Like so many of us guys have found ourselves in at some point in life. Oh shit, I got to get her something quick. And you find what you can. So he'll just find, like, a carcass of something that's, like, already been eaten and wrap that up and give it to her. And then sometimes he'll just, like, take a little flower thing or something and, like, wrap that up and give that to her. And just hoping that he gets to bang it out before, like, as she's unwrapping it, before she's gotten the chance to, like, discover that it's a cubic zirconia.
That's how you get eaten.
In some species, but not in this.
Oh, you'd think that they would, or maybe they're not there yet.
Yeah, this
feels a little light. This feels like it's mostly web.
So there's so that's the way that I always understood it. And then I saw some footage of a nursery web spider recently, and I was like, what the fuck? Because at least in the footage that I saw, and it could have been, sometimes these animal documentaries, they game the whole scene. They have, like, the male and female. Like, you'll see birds and they'll have, like, the little collars on their legs or whatever, the little rings on their legs. But they'll even set stuff up in a studio from time to time that looks like this just beautiful jungle scene or whatever to get the shot. So maybe it was something like that, but I was watching this nursery web spider and he's wrapping the thing and they're explaining the whole thing kind of like how I read it. But I looked at it and I'm like, that's not a convincing wrapping. It's wrapped, but it's still, like, fairly transparent. And there's no fucking way that lady doesn't know that it's not, like, spiders have, like, a zillion eyes. Like, certainly one of them works. Like, spiders need to be able to stalk prey from, like, distances and pounce and stuff. Like a poorly wrapped, it'd be like, it would be like me tying, like, some shoestring around this coffee mug or something like that, and it's still, like, showing through mostly, and I'm like, this is a stuffed animal, and you just kind of see that it's not at all. So and by the way, if anyone wants to, like, write in on YouTube or anything with any questions, because or comments or anything like that, because I'm gonna be digging into these things a little bit more. But this is a lovely little gift about gift giving, and one of my favorite concepts. Again, none of this is like we know this for 100%. This is this is just me kind of speculating on this, wondering if this theory applies. So I'm looking at this, I'm like, there's no way this lady's actually convinced by this gift. Like, no way. And so what's going on there? Is she desperate? Maybe that's a possibility. I think another possibility is there's a sexy son hypothesis, which is that if the female might know, like, might not be duped by a thing, but might, like, at least subconsciously know that trick could work on other females. And because of that, then subconsciously know, like, oh, if this works on other females, then if I have sons that inherit this trait that can trick other females.
Why is it sexy son and not trickster son?
It could be. I think it came up with the rising, like, why would a lady, like, why would a human female, like, be way into a guy that, like, is clearly not sticking around, or a player or something like that? Because if you end up having sons that can also go and impregnate women that without having to pay the cost of raising the offspring, is that there could potentially be some benefit to your genes in that you have more grandchildren that you never know about or whatever else. So there's a sexy son idea. And then also, I don't know anything about nursery web spiders' organs, but generally insects have, like, a lot of compartments and stuff going on in there. There's, like, a whole sperm bank situation. Could be the fact that she's just kind of up for whatever and then stores away the sperm and then doesn't fertilize it until later on. So has, like, multiple mates, and then goes back and is like, yeah, there was the one cheap one, but then there's a guy that had, like, the okay, like, fly, and you can wait around for, if, like, the guy that brings, like, 2 flies comes by, then you, like, have his kids or whatever. But if that guy never shows up, you can still have offspring in the meantime with the mediocre fly guy. So
yeah,
there's a few
the fly guys,
few different things.
Succession
going on.
reference.
Yeah. So anyway, life is a mess, and so is mating. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I'll tell you, learning about all this stuff.
It's a good card. That should be the card.
I love thinking about all of this stuff, and it influences what I think about in terms of when I talk with, like, scientist friends and stuff about dating, it's like conversations like, well, here's what I think I'm probably thinking right now, that sort of, and I love having those kinds of discussions, and I find them helpful. And then sometimes I'm like, maybe I should just, like, learn to dance.
Yeah. Too much brain, too much mind, everything. The brain hijacking everything again. Yeah. It loves to do that.
Yeah.
Let's at the cost of everything else.
Yeah. I have to play the, like, don't dance, don't need to card, I suppose. That's like next level advertising.
It's like Brent Weinbach's short film. Like, it's not I can't dance, I just don't dance. And then by the end, he shows that he does have real good moves. So
there's some mating behavior 101 for you, everybody. We'll get into more of it and reference things like this in future episodes. There's another one of those where I'm like, I've covered a lot of ground here. I hope you guys got your no money's worth, but there's more bonus material on Patreon, patreon.com/mindunderpod. Tell your friends if you enjoy the show, rate it, do all of those other things. Do hope you have a nice Valentine's Day if that's the sort of thing that you're into. Otherwise, I hope you have a nice other things that you're into. So
Konnichiwa.
and konnichiwa. So yeah, until next time.
Keep on salivating, honeys. Ding.